Okay, good morning, everyone. On a weekday morning, these many people sitting here for a policy discussion is quite refreshing. So let's welcome the IT Minister of TamilNadu. So before getting into the government, he had an illustrious career as an investment banker, where he headed Standard Chartered and Lehman Brothers in Singapore and New York, respectively. He is a minister who understands our language and can teach it to us. So, without further ado, let's have a minister here.
Good morning. Thank you for inviting me. I got here a little while ago and I had a chance to spend some time with some of the major icons of the Indian gaming industry, people who have done pioneering things for 20, 30 years, people who started this conference many years ago. And I must say that for somebody like me, it's a bit intimidating because all my life I've been good at doing very logical, very quantitative, very process-oriented things. And I'm always in awe of people who do creative things where there's no formula, where you actually, you are you, everybody's different, everybody's vision is different, everybody's imagination is different. And then yet you can find something that is so you that the rest of the world really admires and wants to buy and wants to follow or emulate. So in that sense, this is a very alien industry for me, though Harish was very kind in his introduction. I know a bit about technology, I know a little more about finance, I'm learning a little bit about politics. But the whole notion of this creative aspect of the AVGC XR industry is actually relatively new to me and is relatively inspiring, but also a bit kind of awesome to me. I'll just say very briefly, Harish has provided, my team has provided me a lot of data. Normally I speak completely extempore without any notes. But today I've got a bunch of data from my team. Harish has given me a bunch of notes. So I thought I'll make sure I touch on the approach that we are taking in TamilNadu and why we're taking this approach and how we see it playing out, because we're still in the middle of publishing our incentive policy for this sector. We've realized we need it. We've been working on it for a while. We've been working with game companies and developers. And so I'll talk about some of the aspects of that as well. But broadly, I think if I take it from a very macro perspective, the two or three things that we know about India and the Indian kind of talent pool and the Indian industry. So far, we have done relatively well integrating into the global economy, particularly on the technology side, particularly on the tech-based industry side. But it's been mostly lower level rote processing, cost saving, efficiency inducing work. And this industry is the opposite of that. It's the industry where creatively a few people can generate billions of dollars in revenue, and whatever the scale of an internet is for things like advertising for Google, it's still at point something cents per click. Whereas in this industry, the games are much, much higher margin and really of high value. We want to be in this creative space across the country. I think all of us, all states, all of us want to move up from doing the routine work to doing the value-added work in other ways, in things like GCCs or global innovation centers, but also in the creative space. As far as TamilNadu is concerned, we feel like we have a very good ecosystem, partly because we have a strong economy, partly because we have had historically high rates of enrollment in higher education, partly because we have deep culture And that culture involves a lot of art, literature, drama, music. Some of that is obvious in our thriving movie industry, which has been a relatively pioneering movie industry. And in fact, one could say that we were the pioneers also of people from the movie industry gravitating to politics, originally for the sake of using movies as a medium of political discourse and expression and changing the debate, the notions of social justice, of equality, of inclusion. It helped a lot that we could use the movies to spread those values. And over time, those individuals then moved directly into electoral politics and changed the country quite a bit, including in the place we're sitting now or standing now, where there was also a major movie star who changed the nature of public debate and policy here. But overall, this is an industry with amazing potential, hundreds of billions of value globally. India is still very nascent in the 1 billion, 2 billion range. Of course, it's a broad industry that encompasses all the way from, real money games to fantasy sports to, pure video games without real money. Also, the application of game-based training, education, scenario building, or the application of extended reality to things like medicine, surgery, other parts of the industrial spectrum, architecture. Also, I was in Germany recently in Munich, and I saw a company where they are building based on the most extensive 3D models of buildings that I've ever seen before, of large buildings, iconic buildings. They're effectively creating a virtual experience of going through these. So I've seen some of the applications of this. In the context of that, I think we wanted to do something in TamilNadu, especially since our government took office. And we have some things that are already going in our favor. We have, as I say, not just the economy, the talent pool, etc. We are also the intellectual property capital of India in terms of number of patents across all fields, not just in this area. And as I say, we have a strong culture, a strong creative culture, a strong literary tradition or dramatic tradition. And in fact, it's a big market. Some of the stats that, and I can say this from personal experience, some of the stats that Harish has given me here, TamilNadu is among the biggest consumers in India for Japanese anime and manga. That I can validate because both my sons, who grew up in Chennai, are big consumers, and I have, loads and loads of stuff to show for it. But it's also the place where they make Tintin and Asterix into Tamil versions and sell them, which I don't think they do in almost any other language. So at least not in India. So it's also got a depth of things that say, somehow we are naturally adapted to this industry, and as I say, for many reasons, for many decades. The proximate reason, I would say, is that many of our talented people who went on to discover their unique talents in this field around the world, maybe it was in other parts of India, maybe it was in Mumbai and Bangalore, but mostly in places like the US or Japan or in other places, especially after COVID, there's this kind of general pull to work closer to home or live closer to home or live closer to family. I think the pandemic changed a lot of things. So we have seen across all industries, but particularly in the creative industry, we have seen a lot of talented people who have worked in global markets in some of the biggest companies in the world in this sector start to move back. And the great luxury we have in Tamil Nadu is that because our enrollment ratios are so high, because literally 1 in every 2 people of the age of 18 or 19 goes to college, our diaspora is very large. For the last 30, 40 years, if you look around the world, a lot of the people who graduated from our institutions were not able to find the right kind of employment locally. And so they went searching, and they found employment in the global markets. And now they are both examples. They are people whose coattails others want to follow, as well as investors and returning entrepreneurs. And our job, I think, as a government is to create the right ecosystem to help them flourish. But as I was talking to the people this morning at breakfast, some of the pioneers of the industry, they were telling me this is an IP game. This is an IP game. It's not about number of seats, number of employees. It's about creating value that can be exponentially or infinitely scaled and sold around the world. And I actually thought of it in a slightly different way, and I want to give you a personal example. I spent some time in the very technical trading, markets of New York. Very quantitative, very technical, very fast moving. And I had a friend who joined the same time I did, and he was what they called an index arbitrage trader. Bear with me, this is a very interesting story, but it's very detailed. So an index arbitrage trader is a gentleman who's sitting with enough computers to make the room lit up. And he's watching all the different, let's take the S&P 500 index. He's watching the 500 stocks that go into the S&P 500 index. And he's calculating, or the computer's calculating for him in real time, what should be the value of the S&P 500 index when these 500 stocks are at this level. Now, there'll be instantaneous points in time when actually that mathematical model breaks down. The index will be slightly cheaper than the individual stocks, or it will be slightly more expensive. It's slightly complicated technically, but nothing in the world is that perfectly timed, infinitesimally small microsecond optimization. So his job is to find those seconds and then basically buy or sell to make money. Basically, it's risk-free trading because he's buying and selling the components and the whole and making money. So, of course, when you're making risk-free money, there's not a lot of money in it, but the volumes are large and you can keep doing this all day without any risk. So it's, it's an intense job. Not a job that I would ever do or think I'm capable of doing. I don't have the kind of laser-like precision on such minutiae. It's not my skill. Anyway, we both work for a firm that went bankrupt called Lehman Brothers, right? We all did different jobs. We probably joined together as associates. And by the time we graduated, I was probably managing director. I mean, by the time the bankruptcy, and he was still probably only vice president, but he was doing this job. Anyway, what I didn't realize about him is that he had some actually unique psychological pattern. And towards the bankruptcy days, he discovered he was like bipolar. So some days he would leave his house and he wouldn't remember if he had turned the gas off, and he would actually have to come back and check. Actually, he had turned it off, but he would get a panic that he had not turned it off. It's just a psychological condition. So he had a little bit of a diversion for medical reasons. He left the industry for a while, went into treatment and all that, and then slowly started back up. And when he started back up, he discovered that while he had a skill for the markets and the ability to give advice and all that, he had all these other skills that he had not even contemplated or thought about when he was doing this strenuous job on Wall Street. And one of them is writing books, and now he's written like 7 or 8 books. That's interesting in itself. But the really interesting thing is that this pattern recognition skill that he probably had or developed, or was an unexpected facet of his otherwise problem, is that he became a very famous and very popular DJ for like stochastic music, for the what I forget what they call it, the rhythmic kind of techno music. Yeah. So that's what he does now. He lives in a resort town in a fancy place. And, he puts out a subscription newsletter, makes some money. And then he flies around the country DJing techno music for parties, the ex-trader, right? And why I talk about that story is that's what efficient economies are supposed to do. Whatever that niche of your talent is, whatever that unique talent that you have that nobody else has, if there is a way that you can make a living out of it or be famous with it or be successful with it, that is what the IP game is about, because it's your unique IP. Very few people will think like that. Very few people will hear music like that. And he happens to have a talent that we would never have known. He would have spent the next 25 years trading if he had not had an issue, and we never have known. So I've always thought about that as the real focus of a government is, as early as possible, try and help people identify what skills they're really good at and find a way for them to channelize that skill or that field or that unique capability into a commercial activity that benefits them, the economy, people they may partner with, people they may employ, things like that. And that's a big ask because it starts very early. But in TamilNadu, we are starting at least at the mid-level. Because we have about 80-85% graduation rates at high school and 50% enrollment in college, we're trying to catch them around 8th class, 9th class, and we're going to start increasing, and we have for the last 3 years about 3 million students, increasing their kind of career guidance, increasing their analysis for fit. In fact, just last week I was in Singapore at the FinTech Festival. I met a famous investor, but also a pioneer in the field called Robert Smith, who runs a big private equity company. And he has developed these computerized tests that help people identify which roles and which fields and which sectors they're best suited for. And he's applied it across millions and millions of people. And I'm now in discussions with him through his charitable foundation to bring that to TamilNadu. And why I say that is, this is the kind of industry where it's not about scale, it's about individuals and their creative talent. The first thing we need to do is help people figure out if this is what they're suited to do. There's no career counselor in any college or school who tells you go be a game developer, right? Most of them don't understand these things. So we have to figure out a way to help people first identify and expose them, because it's very hard for you to imagine things you've not even heard of or ever seen in your life. So increase the exposure, increase the channels for identification, and then find ways to support companies. Now, incentive packages come in all shapes and sizes. Most of the time we talk about incentives for large companies that are putting 10,000 crores to build this factory, or 2,000 jobs or something like that. But in this case, it is a very unique industry because it is neither quantifiable in capital investment. This is not a big capex. I mean, you have to buy licenses and you have to buy hardware and stuff like that. For small companies, it's expensive, but by grand scale, it's not a big capex industry. Nor is it a hugely, tens of thousands of employees industries. All the stories I've heard, including this morning, is 10, 20, 50, 100 people creating hundreds of millions of dollars of value. So this industry is very different, and the kinds of incentives we need to give them are also very different. I was mentioning last month in our discussions that when I traveled to France, I noticed that they have a very interesting approach. I went to a particular area and they had a particular, what do they call them? They call them cluster of AVGC companies that basically came together as kind of a group, and they present one face to the government helps them with subsidies or policy or resolving their issues or whatever. And I thought that model was very good, because in any economy, in any democracy, in any system, the big will basically have enough power to control the government. That's the reality. The small is where we need to support the small, the middle enterprises to help them grow, and then to create the next generation of small and middle enterprises. And it's very hard for the government to reach out to hundreds of players individually. So these clusters, these groups actually help a lot. And so I've been encouraging in TamilNadu the 40 or 50 companies that I have met personally, and I'm sure there's many tens more, to get together and have one organization where we as a government can interface through them, and we can set up a dedicated support cell for them. We can help with the facilitation through a website. We can help get them some B2B exchange between themselves, and we can help them, especially in the age of a lot of regulation against real money gaming. We can help them navigate the newly created laws and regulations. So I think it's basically, in our policy, it's about helping ease of doing business. It's about helping build talent, identify and build talent. It's about giving them common platforms and support resources, and then, of course, financial incentives. As somebody was telling me this morning, the example of Montreal, we want to do that too. We want to give, I'll give you in a minute the details, but we want to give subsidies in a way that attract people to come and set up here. One of the things that we have had, so, in many ways I've touched on these topics, but we want to have a skill advisory council, we want to have professors of practice, we want to train those who can become trainers, we want to have some talent recognition platform, and starting with relatively young people, we want to help prepare the future generation of talent through awareness, through identification, through kind of pathways that we can create. As far as the common platform is concerned, my colleague from the ministry is here, the CEO of our deep tech incubator called IT&T Hub, which we started recently. And we want to, in a similar vein, have a center of excellence for the AVGC XR industry. We know a lot of these licenses are expensive and difficult to fund when you're small. We want to have infrastructure all the way from plug and play workspaces to meeting halls to performance capture studios, all the technical stuff, facial photogrammetry studios, market intelligence, data analytics, different kinds of components of what makes a successful product. And as my chief minister says, one of our goals is that we want all areas of the state to develop. And in our time, for example, huge amount of investment and employment have gone into places like Dharmapuri and Krishnagiri, which were among the most economically backward districts in Tamil Nadu. And now we have tens of thousands of employees there in facilities that assemble iPhones, in facilities that make sneakers. A lot of the moving away from China business, which has come to India, which has come to Tamil Nadu, we have located there. In a similar vein, we want to have such centers of excellence and such shared resource options across the state, not just in Chennai, but in our tier 2 and tier 3 cities, which is a broad ambition across all industries, but also across, also in this particular industry. And then finally, as I said, the financial incentives, we always used to give incentives only based on eligible fixed assets. That was the definition. EFA, we give you this percentage of EFA, that percentage of EFA as a subsidy, payback in this many years, etc. This year we've changed the policy broadly for all companies, and I'm sure that when it comes to AVGC, we're in the final stages of it with a lot of support from industry players. But broadly, we've changed it to say we'll also give subsidies on lease or rent, on employee payroll, so up to a certain salary per month, up to a certain number of people per month, the government will reimburse you for the salary. And then, of course, for training, which we used to give even for manufacturing. And then things like power usage, stamp duty for registration subsidies, those kinds of things. So I think all these will be even more useful to medium and small enterprises and creative enterprises, because obviously the cost of your team is a big component of your overall cost, and those are the places we think we can help attract people and provide some, I don't know, additional incentive to come and set up with us. We also provide already in places like IT&T, and we'll do that for this industry, subsidies with 100% patent filing support, things like that. So we have taken what I would say was our industrial policy, already adapted it towards GCCs, towards high-tech industries, towards innovation and R&D. We've put out R&D policy and so forth. And now we're going to fine-tune that even more for the AVGC sector and try and create an ecosystem. Because I've seen many examples, and this morning I was enlightened about the Montreal ecosystem, where if you create the right kind of spark points, you end up attracting a lot of people of the same talent, of the same mindset, of the same urge, and then you start having something special happen because all these people can work together and encourage each other, and what we call network externalities start to develop, much like places like Silicon Valley have shown us in microprocessor and IT. So that's broadly our vision. I want to say that we come at it with the humility that it's a new field. It's got enormous potential. The government doesn't quite know what to do, so we take inputs a lot from the industry, from our entrepreneurs, from our young people. I will just add one line, which is that, or one point, which is that I was a member of the GST Council of India for a couple of years and also a member of the, what do they call it, GOM, effectively subcommittee for the taxation of casinos, horse racing, and online gaming. I tried my best to get some rational outcome out of it. I gave concrete suggestions that were workable through good data systems in terms of how to tax what, how to separate gross gaming revenues from platform fees or service revenues, how to tax which one, how to segregate at inception and tax. Unfortunately, none of those were taken, and so we have this 28% of all revenues GST regime now, which the government of India now, in its retrospective wisdom, says it is rethinking. But hopefully, better sense will eventually prevail. And my suggestions, or equivalent of them, will get taken, so it won't stifle the industry and drive it underground. I also want to say that because of some of the social problems of online real money games, there has been an urge to legislate, and in fact I have the data here, that TamilNadu was the first to pass a bill. The governor rejected it, or the High Court rejected it. Then the government passed a second bill, set up a regulatory agency. But part of the problem is that in the urge to legislate and in the urge to do what was precautionary, we have not got nuanced enough definitions of video games versus real money games. And so I've been working with the group. We got together, the Home Secretary, who used to be IT Secretary with me, and we've started having discussions about how to make this a much more nuanced regulation. And I'm looking for the exact phraseology, but it'll come to me. But anyway, I think on the one hand, we are elected officials. We can't be immune from the pressures of society. We hear about suicides and death and problems. It is our job to do something about it. On the other hand, we have to be thoughtful and sophisticated and nuanced, because over-regulation or thoughtless regulation will kill the creative spark and will cause a huge dent in the potential of this industry that is hundreds of billions of dollars worldwide and growing, my best guess, CAGR 20-25% a year. Certainly we don't want to lose our share of that. So I think my time is up. Let me stop here. I don't know what the format is, whether there's any Q&A or we just finish with this, but, okay. Thank you very much for the opportunity.